Okay, everyone. Hi, I'm Hina. I go to the University of Chicago where I study psychology and neuroscience, and I'm also pursuing a minor in data science. I've definitely been considering a couple of things here and there, but that's what I've kind of settled on this year so far. I just popped by ISKL particularly because I worked in the admissions office this summer where I spoke to thousands of high schoolers about kind of that application process, how to get into a university like the University of Chicago. And I feel like the best way for me to be able to give back to my high school is to be able to talk to you guys and offer some advice that I would have really appreciated when I was in high school as well.
Hi guys, I'm Molly. I have a younger brother in 12th grade, if any of you know Oscar. Yeah, I go to La Trobe University, as Kendra was saying. I study speech pathology, so if anyone has questions on that, I'd be willing to talk about that as well. La Trobe's in Melbourne, so again, if you have any questions specifically about Melbourne, feel free to shout them out. But yeah, as Hina was saying, the application process is pretty important to know your stuff. So I really struggled with that when I was in grade 12. So I'm here to ease any doubts and just provide a bit of clarity.
I think the most important thing for me is kind of breaking the misconception about American universities and the whole application process in terms of, oh, I don't know if this will be too difficult for me. Oh, I really like this school, but I don't know how exactly I should go about it. I feel like for me, the best strategy that worked was that I just kind of looked at a bunch of universities. I also really liked taking advantage of like virtual events that were happening. I know in COVID, it might be a little bit difficult to be able to physically visit those schools, but those virtual events that I hosted even in the summer are a really good gauge of how the universities kind of look like, what the student body kind of looks like, all those things. Kind of engaging in those really helped me out and decide on which university I wanted to apply to. It happened to be U Chicago just because I feel like they really valued creativity and a wide variety of intelligences, not just academically. I feel like they valued kind of me spreading my wings a little bit in high school as well, physically, creatively, socially. I feel like all those things were really highlighted in their application process. So that's where I kind of ultimately ended up deciding on U Chicago. And then I kind of kind of just really focused and directed my focus onto this one application. Obviously, you should be spreading it around. You're not guaranteed your first pick, obviously, but I think giving it all over the summer, planning kind of my essay because they do require lots of materials, and then coming up with something that was authentically myself really helped. I got an email from my admissions officer that kind of told me how she read my essay and felt like she really thought she was speaking to me, and keeping that authenticity alive was very vital and essential in my application. It also tied into some of my interests that I was potentially pursuing in college. I wrote about something that was talking about mental health and mental health awareness, which was particularly applicable to COVID. And I'm actually studying neuroscience and psychology and working in an Asian American mental health awareness lab now. So a lot of it has relationships in kind of just keeping that application really holistic and have it be like a continuation, have a flow. Obviously, you can do a bunch of activities in high school, but if they don't make sense, if you're kind of just doing it to fill up your resume, I feel like admissions officers will definitely see through that. So having, 3 activities that make a lot of sense and add to who you are as a person make much more sense than just 10 activities that you kind of just do because you have the time for it. And being able to make those experiences be meaningful and being able to write about them especially makes so much more sense. I hear admissions officers talking about it all the time, like they can see if you're doing this for a reason, doing Music Honor Society because you really love music or because, it's one more thing you can add to your resume. So I found that to be quite insightful for me, and that's just my first piece of advice. Yeah.
I think a couple points I'm going to dig into with what Hina just said there. So number 1 is really look at universities not based on reputation. That's really hard, and I get it. I go to La Trobe University. I doubt any of you know La Trobe University, but within Australia, within Melbourne, it has a really, really good reputation, and even worldwide. But it's not one of those big names like Melbourne University, Monash, right? University of Sydney and University of New South Wales, those sorts of really big names. But the reason I chose La Trobe University, kind of like Hina, was I did some digging. And I looked at what things were really important to me. And for me, that was my course, speech pathology. It's not a super common course, and because of that, it's not a course that is always done well. And what I mean by that is Melbourne University had always been my dream university, right? It had everything I wanted, the reputation, the resources, the international student body. That's what I really wanted, because I've always been an international student. I've never really felt connected to Australia, so I really wanted an international student body. I had to kind of let that go, and the reason why was because Melbourne University has this thing called the Melbourne model, right? And for some courses, that's really amazing, and it really, really works. Often that would be finance, business, those sorts of things. So if you're interested in that, definitely have a look at Melbourne University. But for me, speech pathology is more humanities-based, right? So I had to look at schools that were more tailored to that. And that's a very Australian thing. You'll find that universities are not known in Australia for their university, which is quite a common thing that I found in the UK or America. Universities in Australia are known for their specific courses that they do really well. So that's one thing that I think is important. And the second thing that I wanted to touch into is being you. All right, if any of you know Hina, she was, or is really, an amazing singer, very into the arts, right? But also does a lot of sports. I'm kind of similar in that regard. We were both in theatre. I did a lot of sports as well. And it was really important for me that I went to a school that supported that, continued to support that. It wasn't all about academics. So that's another reason that you have to let go of the misconception that reputation is all that matters. Jobs in later years will look at your degree, yes. They'll look at where you got it from, of course. But they will also look at you as a person. They'll also look at you and how well you did in that course. And it's all about the interviews, right? So it's not going to be about where you went to school. That's going to be like the most basic thing that they'll look at for 2 seconds. So yeah, that's a really important thing that I want to touch on. And then the fourth thing is what Hina was talking about with the essays. Forget that for Australia. If any of you are applying to Australia, you can just drop that out of your mind, because I freaked out about it when I was in 12th grade. All of my friends were writing their personal statements. I'm going, oh my God, like I didn't even know I had to do that. Oh my God, like I went to Miss Lewis, who was my counselor. I'm like, what is this? Like no one told me, none of my cousins, you know. And the reason no one told me was because it doesn't exist for Australia. So fun, if you're interested in that, less work, eh? But yeah, it doesn't exist. Unfortunately, they do mostly see you as a grade on a piece of paper. And that's another reason that I chose La Trobe University, was they have this special program called the Aspire program. And it essentially means that you do submit little personal statements that are tailored around your service to your community. So for me, that was a refugee program that I was the head of here at ISKL, MKO. I don't know if it still is running. But yeah, so I talked about that impact on me running that, and vice versa, how I was able to help my community, because I didn't like the idea of being seen as just a grade. My grades were really good, but that didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was that I'm a person, I'm not a number on a piece of paper. So I found a uni that would look at me as more than just a piece of paper. And yeah, that's just another reason that I chose uni over, that was right for me over reputation of uni.
Great. So I think just to go off of that a little bit, like Molly said, there's kind of these two defining features that people like know me for, or that she kind of knows me for. And that's a really important part of the application process that we talk about at UChicago admissions as well, of these kind of 2 or 3 elements that really make you as a person, that kind of defined your high school, that kind of shaped you as a person. And then on those essays, you kind of reflect that. I got this wonderful piece of advice from Miss Cook on my Common App essay to actually dive into a specific moment in one of my really life-changing activities, after-school activities, or things that I engaged in high school, and kind of blow that up or kind of extract as much as I can from that single moment to show how valuable those experiences were to me. So just to give you an example, my essay was actually from my theater club, or one of my theater experiences in ISKL, and I chose a specific moment that we had in a workshop and kind of extracted the emotions that happened during it, what I felt, what I think it taught me during that particular moment in time, and then I was able to write an entire essay and show how valuable I find these experiences and how much I would, even at this university, for example, or what I'd be able to offer once I was accepted. So kind of a lot of these things, being able to be really reflect, being able to reflect, is really important. And I think in IB, obviously CAS really teaches you to do that very, very well. So I kind of looked back at all of my CAS reflections, even from junior year and part of senior year, and looked back on all these amazing experiences I had so far in high school. And then I chose one particular moment from that and was able to really focus on that, dig deeper. Why am I doing theater? Why does it really matter to me? Why have I spent so many hours on this? And then make it into an essay that really appealed to, I guess, my admissions officers. And similarly, doing something meaningful, something like a passion project, that really helped me. My UChicago essay happened to be centered around that. So again, like showing how much you care, how much you're going out of your way, even outside of an academic context, really makes you a competitive applicant, because there will be plenty of people who have amazing grades, perfect straight A's, but really what makes you stand out is having these experiences that you can reflect on, take something from, and also be able to offer, because the university is looking for people who can enrich their programs as well. So I think they're looking for people who will have those goals and things that they are willing to do at your university and then make them into real life things that happen in college. I talked about wanting to be a researcher and possibly pursuing these little passion projects I had in psychology, neuroscience, things like that. And I did happen to do that in college. I emailed a bunch of professors that I really liked, and then landed a couple of lab jobs already, even as a first year. So again, like making those things really happen and not just writing them on an essay. If you really believe them, I think that admissions officers, again, will see through that. So I think I was very genuine in my thoughts that, okay, I did this outside of high school because I was genuinely interested. I want to help people. I want to increase mental health awareness, especially in Asia. That was my essay, and then that really manifested itself into a real thing in college. So again, being genuine, authentic, that's very, very important. And finding those like 2 or 3 things that you really think have been consistent throughout your life and that you think you can root yourself in, especially in college, are essential and vital, and a great thing to write about in your essays as well, because those really do matter in college. I will tell you, especially for American universities, I worked alongside a lot of admissions officers this summer, and they were like, yeah, like you can have like good grades and things like that, but the essays are what really matter. They again send personalized letters to every single applicant based on their essay once they do get admitted, and that just shows how much they value kind of you as a person. Like Molly was saying, you're definitely not just a piece of paper at UChicago. There's so many iterations, so many rounds of like looking over the paper, things like that. I was able to get an insight into it, and really making a compelling essay will definitely come above, like, say, a really perfect SAT score, for example. UChicago doesn't even look at SAT scores. Well, they do, but it's optional. So if you're not a test person, maybe just write a really, really good essay, and that could get you somewhere. So again, just like putting all of your efforts in the right places. Don't stress too much about, getting that perfect SAT score, or say you didn't do so well in one class. Like, they're not going to just be like, okay, that's it. Like, I have a lot of peers around me. UChicago is a very well-known institution. It's very well established, but lots of people around me that said, hey, I didn't even submit my SAT score. I didn't do so well in high school, but I really was authentically myself, and I wrote something that I was interested in, and I knew what I would add to this university. Made a really creative essay that even I was lucky enough to read over some of my friends' essays just because I found them so interesting. And that was really, I was like, wow, like, you definitely deserve to be here because you were able to show your real self, not just with your grades, but through writing and reflection. And that to me is quite beautiful as well, because it's not just like a do or die situation, which can happen in lots of universities. So again, a really big reason why I applied to University of Chicago, but there's a lot of other institutions that kind of use that similar model. So once you talk to your counselors about this is the type of university I want to be valued for just more than my grades, and I think I could do this, you should definitely look that up, talk with your counselor, do your own research, and then arrive at one university that will maybe do that for you. And then obviously lots of other ones that you can consider that also seem to fit you as well as a student.
Can I interject for a second, just for the sake of the very short lunch period? We did receive a few questions beforehand, and one of them that I think is probably very interesting to everyone in this room is how did you feel, or how did you handle transitioning as a third culture kid back to your home country, where we all know, I think we all use home very loosely in an international context, but how did you make that transition?
In Australia, it's really rough. And the reason why is that Australians don't leave Australia. If they go on holiday, they go to Bali. Like it's a big continent, and everyone loves Australia, and so they never leave. And the most they'll go is like the next state over, right? So Hina and I were talking about this, about having your family live so far away from you, and everyone around you, whether you live on college or not, is constantly like, oh, I'm just popping home. And it'll be in Australia, you know, like a 3-hour drive or a 7-hour drive, doesn't matter. They'll just make the drive home. And you're like, I can't do that. Like that drive at a couple hours, that's my flight time, right? And it is rough, which is why I think it's so important to continue or maintain the things that you really love and the things that relax you, the things that make you comfortable, right? Think of you right now. You're in a pretty stressful situation, whether you're taking the IB, whether you're taking the SATs, whether, you know, whatever exams you're taking, you're in a stressful situation. It's rough. So anything that helps you relax right now, remember that and keep that for wherever you go, right? So for Hina and I, it was sports. And yeah, so people will constantly ask you, oh, where are you from? And in Australia, that means, what town are you from? And I was born in this tiny, tiny, tiny rural town. There's probably like 3,000 people there, right? I never lived there. Until recently, I had lived in Australia for 3 years, and that was 10 years ago. And I did not want to identify with that place. That was my least favorite place in Australia. So I didn't want to tell anyone about that, but it's a long, complicated story if you're like, oh, well, when I was 6 weeks old, I moved to Shanghai, and then la, 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 right? No one wants to, everyone starts to like get a little, like just nodding their head, and you're like, oh, you're not even listening to me at this point, right? So you do just kind of say, like, I might just go, oh, I'm from Melbourne. I just kind of adjust to where am I living right now? That's where I'm going to say that I'm from. And if people go, oh, really? I'm from Melbourne. Like, which school did you go to? I probably know you. You're like, oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. And there's probably zero chance that you do, or even like know someone who knows me, right? So in the sense of literally, where are you from? That's a rough question. But it does draw some people in, and you're like, hey, I have an interesting backstory if you want to know a bit more. Yeah. Yeah, I think the hardest thing is adjusting to everyone here. When they would ask me, where are you from? I'd just say Australia. It's such an easy, simple answer. No one asks many more questions because everyone just kind of assumes that you say you're from Australia, but are you really from Australia? That's just kind of an understood thing. Whereas home in Australia, people ask you where you're from, they're looking for specific things. They're looking for things that they know. You know, they have all of these connections that are so established. So you have to readjust again and just go, I am from here. I want that known. Like, I'm still Australian, but I am not Australian in the same way that you're Australian, and that's okay. And eventually I'll become Australian in the same way that you're Australian. When I make some roots, I have connections, but right now I'm not, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty similar to me. I would say the best way to kind of navigate that is again, coming back to that whole point of 2 or 3 things that make you what you are and who you are as a person. So for me, that was singing and rugby. I played touch rugby all throughout my high school and middle school. And U Chicago happened to have a rugby team on campus for women. And so I joined the team. I also am on an a cappella group. I sing in an a cappella group. So those 2 things really grounded me, again, rooted me into the university. So it made me feel like I was at home. I kind of had that parallel through high school, and that was reciprocated in college. I found a community, kind of a support system. Obviously, my family lives here still, so very far away from home. But then I had that kind of sense of familiarity that I had in college, which made the transition so much easier. It made me feel very welcomed. It made me feel, okay, I belong here. I'm here for a reason. And so that was very important to me. So I would definitely recommend that in college. That imposter syndrome just rubs right off once you join those clubs that you've engaged in throughout high school. So that was essential to me, and it gives you a platform to then do well in your studies, discover new clubs, activities, things like that. You don't have to worry about that at all. So yeah, those 2 or 3 things, definitely keep those around you so that you can have that in college and keep your home, I guess I would say.
Do you guys have any questions? Have they said yeah?
Yeah.
So for Chicago, how would you describe like the diversity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, this whole aspect of being international, it's so fun to be able to be valued for your perspective. I'll give you a great anecdote actually. Being in my lab, my research lab now, there's a lot of people that are just Asian American and not necessarily have that real Asian root, I suppose. And giving my perspective about what I know about Malaysia, Japan, India, all 3 places where I'm from, they really value that and they think it's so cool and interesting. So I've never felt ostracized because of my background. They actually really think it's so cool, and I feel like I can give a perspective even though I may not know more than them academically. So that's a really great thing I have. But in terms of international students, there's so many. They don't make up the majority. I think it's like 16% at U Chicago, but that's still plenty. And there's so many how do I say this, cultural groups that you can join if you want kind of a sense of like, that's kind of part of who I am, so I want to join. So I popped by some of these South Asian Student Association events. Like we did a Diwali party and we all dressed up, and it was so nice to be able to kind of be connected to my roots in that way. So you'll never have to worry about that. I know a lot of American universities have similar types of associations if you want that, but you'll also meet so many different people. That has been really enriching for me. So you don't have to worry about that.
I know you didn't ask about Australia, but just quickly, Australia is just a massive melting pot of thousands of different cultures, and I think that's the main thing that made me more comfortable living in Melbourne especially. Like I'd just go, there's this one street in Melbourne called Swanston Street, right? And it's down the road from the biggest train station in Melbourne, and just felt like all my homes. You know, I'd have a Malaysian restaurant, then a Chinese restaurant, then, you know, like just got to go and just visit home for a couple hours. Like it was just really nice to have that sort of thing. And just like Hina was saying, all of the universities, they really emphasize the importance of cultural clubs. So in my university alone, we have a really big Muslim population. So we have prayer rooms and separate bathrooms and all those sorts of things for our Muslim students, and clubs. And then we also have, like I said, the different cultural clubs. So it's a really big point of emphasis in Australia, because it's just been like that forever, to just have welcome in everyone from different backgrounds. So yeah.
Any other questions?
I can add one more thing though. If you guys are doing the IB, I like to give this little piece of advice that I always tell kind of the high schoolers that are like really frustrated about the IB. When they come into the office, they're like, does anyone do did the IB, did they do the IB in high school? And I'm like, yes, I did. And I always like to tell them that it's just the best preparation you'll get for college, like ever. UChicago is known to be one of the most rigorous undergraduate programs in the country, but I actually found IB to be more difficult at many points in my college experience. So like, don't worry, you're not just wasting your time. The IB is so worth it. All these essay writing skills, all these things you're learning. My math class, I took HL math, and I probably, in my 1 quarter of college for calculus, I probably did like 2 classes worth of IB stuff. It was just actually insane. You'll find that academics will come quite easily to you if you did the IB, and then you can focus on other things like finding an awesome job or doing really fun extracurriculars, finding an amazing social life, things like that. So again, the IB will all be worth it if you're doing it, even if you're doing a couple of classes. I find it to be very, very helpful, and it will for your essays as well, because you're probably so bored of writing so many words and papers at this point, and those essays are just an add-on. So yeah, these high schoolers that I said, the IB was probably was easier than part of college. They were like shocked, but it's really true. And I didn't think it would have been, especially at UChicago, but it's very, very true. So just work hard. It'll be worth it. I promise. I definitely found it to be worth it. So that's just my piece of advice and piece of encouragement. Just work hard. It'll definitely pay off in the end. So you can get through this, I promise. I'm loving it so much. College is so fun. I've met so many different people. I've really become more objective as a person, I think, doing everything I love. And coming back and being able to experience KL as kind of like a tourist is so fun after 11 years of living here. So again, all of those things come even in just a year. I've only been away for a year. So really be excited for that. I know senior year is so tough. I was there, trust me, I remember. But you can get through this, and like, it's so nice that COVID is slowly ending as well. So you can kind of have that senior experience that you were hoping for. I didn't get that to the fullest extent, but really be grateful about that. And then college will just come sooner than you expect. So good luck.
In saying that, like we've been saying this whole time, the IB's tough. Like, really be conscious of burnout. So I arrived at uni and I was like, how am I going to muster up all of that dedication, all of that motivation to do that all again for the next 4 years, right? I don't know if I can do it. And the thing that really helped me do that is a gap year. And I took an unintentional gap year. It just happens when you're applying for Australia most of the time, because you have to re-coordinate yourself back into the Australian year, which is from January to December rather than August to June. So I had 9 months off. If you're considering a gap year and you took the IB and you're feeling like I could just collapse in a heap at any moment, you know, like my brain is reduced to mush and I don't know if I can put back the pieces, sort of thing. Maybe not to that much of a dramatic extent even, like even just in the barest sense, like my body's tired, anything like that. Just listen to yourself, and if you're considering a gap year, it might be what you need. I was in COVID, and to me that just meant spending time with my family. We actually visited America to see some of our friends in America because Australia wasn't open at the time, and yeah, it just helped me so much. Even if you're work for a couple months, look for a job, create a safety net in terms of money, anything like that. A break can be really, really beneficial, and don't set yourself up for failure by coming in. I have super high expectations for myself all the time. Don't force yourself to try and meet those expectations all the time or too quickly, and you know, set yourself up for failure, basically. Yeah.
Thank you.